네, 음악의 baseline, 내 몸짓의 baseline, 내 성속의 baseline, 내 성공의 baseline. Baseline, 지금부터 baseline.
Hi guys, how are we all today?
Morning.
Oh, just beautiful. It's actually, 8-9 degrees here Celsius. So, the sun's shining. It's almost like summer.
That's good. It's almost like winter here.
So what are we going to talk about today? Because, our time is shortened now. So we do these smaller ones instead of these longer ones.
The context today, I get sort of two angles about VC models. There's companies that want to start the journey of VC models and perhaps even the whole SAP implementation as well at times. The other one that's recently cropping up more is companies that have had VC models for a long time and they're reaching the point where they're questioning whether they're fit for purpose. And the warning signs of that typically are they do not adapt to change very well. No one really understands how they hang together. They're almost scared to make changes sometimes because you fix one thing, break another. So it's that sort of scenario. I think in this talk is not really about what to do about that, but perhaps more just giving some focus on when you're starting on that modeling journey, whether it's to recreate models or create new models. There's probably some key processes that we need to think about.
So both of those sound to me like Moses on the mountaintop coming down with this mission from God.
From God.
Figure this out for me, consultant person, not really knowing what it means or how to do it or why. Typically, I think the first thing you're going to do is figure out how you want to group things within that company, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. If I put my consultant hat on, when I come into a business that I may know something about or very little about, you're coming in trying to help a business create good structured models without actually knowing much about their product. And of course, they know a lot about their product, but not much about VC typically. From a personal point of view, the way for me to understand what they've got process is about just groupings. Typically, I sort of sit down with probably the people who are going to be the modelers. You get the hard facts information, you get an understanding of what data cleansing they might have to do with just the components and raw materials, if you like, because sometimes that's a mess. You guys might have seen the cases where you'll have like your R&D department think that their products have this list of components, and there'll be a production manager who thinks their products have this different list of components, and then you'll get the guys on the factory floor who just make whatever's in the box.
There's salespeople too. They
And
might have a separate list too. They sometimes go off menu, eh?
Here we are at the start of the first event of the afternoon, the second semi-final of the 100 yards for people with no sense of direction. I'll just give you the competitors. Lane 1, Skolomoski of Poland. Lane 2, Zanapatik of France. Lane 3, Grobovich of the United States. Next to him, Drabble of Trinidad. Next to him, Fernandez of Spain. And in the outside lane, Borman of Brazil.
And so often you get these disparate pieces, just even at that level. Those ones are normally quite fixable with a bit of effort and a bit of communication. At that level, you're looking at grouping things. So you're trying to understand grouping things into sub-assemblies, what belongs with what, and looking at how the production line.
Yeah, well, for me, it always started out with the classification schema, right? Because in my mind, everything about the VC model is driven off the classification schema. And have you guys ever eaten at one of those Japanese hibachi restaurants, where the guy cooks in front of you on this big table-like thing? It can get kind of like that, where you start looking at the data and you're trying to slice it and dice it and chop it all up and make it all fit in various ways and cook it in groupings that make logical sense. The issue with that can sometimes be that the way you think about grouping something and the way either your other internal people or your consultants think about grouping something is completely different. And this is where I keep coming back to that classification schema as the driver, because that's really what drives how you build your constraints, and in turn, what determines how your bill of material will react once that order is processed.
No, that's dead right. So that's sort of the other level of grouping. And sometimes when you're getting to the classification side of things, some of those characteristics and classes that relate what you're doing in the BOM, but then you're starting to bring in what the salespeople, marketing people want to see from a selection point of view. So you're starting to create these groups of things and get a view of what the products are. The risk is you might focus on one product family. In the classification system, you might want to take into account some of these other product families that you haven't got to yet in your structure.
There's a couple of good articles out there on the CWG portal about classification schemas. Without diving too deep into things that aren't released yet, people need to really look at the AVC roadmap to understand why they might want to be grouping their sales classification separately and differently than their manufacturing classification. Even without the AVC, it's still a good thing to do, because there's always a translation between the two. But a lot of consultants just want to throw it all together and sell you the Batomatic.
Trouble mixing your potions in time for the winter solstice? Is your sorcery getting hung up because of the hours you spend mixing and blending your remedies? Then you need Rovco's amazing new witch's aid, the Super Batomatic 77. You never have to use mortar, pestle, or cauldron again. Super Batomatic cuts, chops, slices, dices, mixes, and blends herbs, plants, twigs, sprigs, leaves, branches, claws, teeth, eyes, ears, skin, hair, blood, flies, insects, limbs, and organs of all kinds, toads, lizards, newts, mice, rats, and bats, faster than you can knife a goat. Take this 11th century remedy from the key of Alcazar.
If you go through this exercise and you can get it figured out to where you can logically group a section of your product that works and yet allows you to maintain it while still sharing like items, such as dependencies, it's almost like, you've seen the light.
They're not going to catch us.
It's a wonderful thing.
That's very true. And out there, of course, in the world, there will be people who are put up as the VC consultant, and sometimes they are really good, and sometimes it's like, oh, we've got a VC project. Who does SD? Oh, we'll get you to do the VC part. You really need to look closely at what consultants are put in front of you to understand if they've got the right skill set as well to take you on this journey. Because at the end of the day, when you see the light is when that model's done, the integration and everything works well, and people who are involved with the model can look at it and go, yep, I really know where all the parts live. So if someone comes along with a change, I know where to go. It's got its roadmap.
Ideally, the people that are coming with those changes understand the model too. So they're giving you formats and things like that in a way that you understand. It's the right puzzle piece for them.
That's where, training comes into play, right? And I don't know if any of our audience has ever looked at how you get trained on VC modeling. There's really only a couple of choices. There's only one, in fact, online choice that's available to folks that they can actually load up at their own convenience and go back through anytime they want to, and that training is built on best practices. Phil, I think you might know which one that is.
Would that be mine, Steve?
Or you go pay SAP 10 or 12 times the amount of money for, maybe a quarter of the value, if that, or you build your own stuff in-house based on somebody that's taken some time, which nobody ever gets to do it. But it's important that you have a baseline. Your stuff, Phil, is probably about the best baseline that I've seen in my 24 years of VC modeling type stuff.
No, thanks for that. I even had one customer, or it's one of these ones that figured out that their modeling structure is not great. They actually did the training, quite a few modelers through that, and then went, oh, that looks nothing like our models. And so they've started on a journey of reassessing. Training at the start of a project is really beneficial.
Well, and then engaging with the CWG is really, really the follow-up after that, right? Because the CWG has so many knowledgeable people in it, and it's got best practices going back to 2005, and they're still viable today. They're being carried forward in the AVC in many ways, and that's where the information on the AVC is going to be, is in the CWG, until Phil gets the time to put together some AVC training, which I understand is in the works. So for all of you out there looking for it, hang in there.
No, it'll come one day. I think we'll wrap up there, guys.
So don't forget, out there in YouTube land, while you're waiting for your vaccine patiently, because, manufacturing logistics takes a while to ramp up, there's going to be a button over there somewhere that allows you to subscribe. when you watch this video, Phil has very kindly put links to other videos that we did. Tell us what you think. And if you don't tell us, we'll just do whatever the hell we want.
Feel free to jump in with ideas.
Yep. Well, you did that, Jason, and look where you are now.
All right, guys, have a good one. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.